so once you're there's a slight yeah. I don't think okay, yeah. But yeah, and then like usually at the end, kind of so no, yeah. So right now I have three microphones. I have a little microphone. It's not very loud, but oh really? And so that's just good evening. I don't know if she'll stay at the podium. That was the plan. There was a podium. I know that's where her books are. I like the one at they have vegan snacks. Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much. It's really small. So, and it's like a big so instead of one thing about it is that but that's yeah, that one works really well. I want to get fired back. Well, it's yeah, it's like if you use chapstick, make sure you're on it. So I'm thinking that I have maybe it's limiting the split. So maybe that's the issue. Or the second option is that so we're actually did you leave something back? Or we can have like a little thumbnail thing. Excuse me, I'm leaving. Yeah, exactly. Can you see something way more interesting? But it works for now. They probably want it.
Oh, was it the meditation thing that was I like tried to see it free shit because I grew up in Chicago, so if somebody's saying it, he had free shit. It's a scam. Like somebody sends you like their skin or like oh you want to know things like oh a donation. Like, that's what I grew up with. Yeah, and I was like no, so it was like very short cut. And this dude came up t-shirts. And I was like, okay, whatever. I don't even know. So I was like, I go to the no,
like $120. I'm like, I don't want that. No. If you take my Pepsi, I will take you. I want the platform shoes with like the fishies flats. Yes. That'd be the best thing ever. I don't know if you can actually I've seen them on Pinterest.
Good morning, everyone. So much for being at this event. It's so lovely seeing you all.
Good morning and welcome. This is such a great crowd. This is very exciting. My name is Allison Maurer. I'm a librarian here at Marriott Library. I want to welcome our special guest who's going to enter shortly, Gia Bianca Stevens, who's going to read to us today about queer revolutionaries interspersed with some of Gia's own revolutionary experiences. The University of Utah embraces freedom of speech and academic freedom. We encourage lively debate and discussion of all topics of public importance. This embrace of the sharing of ideas is central to civic life in a democratic society, and especially a healthy and vibrant university campus such as ours. As members of the university community, we strive for high-quality participation, meaningful civic dialogue, patience, and a willingness to learn, especially in the face of words with which we might disagree. Respect for all participants is essential for the well-being of all members of the university community. This event is meant to create an affirming and inspiring environment for U of U LGBTQ students, staff, faculty, and for everyone in the community. The speech policy of the U calls for no heckling, no obscenities, and no disruptions that would limit Gia Bianca's freedom of expression. The titles Gia will read from are all published by HarperCollins, who has provided us with no-cost copyright permission to hold today's public performance. Thank you, HarperCollins. The titles, thank you. The titles Gia will read from are all, thank you, HarperCollins, there we go. Two of the books Gia will read from are recently challenged books. The image you see displayed on the screen shows some recent research a group in the library has worked on regarding censorship in Utah and at schools across the nation. As you'll see, there is a significant prevalence of themes amongst the book titles being challenged. The majority have LGBTQ characters, authors, or storylines. A substantial portion of the titles also have Black, Indigenous, or other people of color as characters, authors, or storylines. It's a troubling trend and a big reason we wanted to hold this event today for Pride Week at the U of U. Gia will read and speak to us for a little less than an hour. Then we'll have a Q&A, conversation, socializing, and I have pulled several books by and about LGBTQ pioneers. So please be sure to come check out the book table. And Rachel Ernst is also with us, a special collections librarian with items from the Utah Pride Center collection. Let me now introduce Tanya from the Utah Pride Center, who will introduce our performer.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tanya Hawkins. I'm one of the co-CEOs at the Utah Pride Center. I'm actually the first Black queer woman at the Utah Pride Center here, so thank you. That's amazing. So at the Pride Center, please come down. We're at 1380 South Main. We have programs, we have support programs, we have mental health, peer support, suicide prevention, and just people hanging out and just chatting. It's very good energy. Also, I am lucky to have a co-CEO, Jonathan Folk. So he is over the Utah Pride Festival, which will be happening in June, the first weekend in June, so come down. It's amazing, it's fun. Also, please visit our website. That'll direct you to what's going on with the festival, and I'll also give you a calendar of what's happening at the Pride Center. So, I would love to, this is my pleasure. I have worked with Gia for 6 months, I believe, and I'm so excited to introduce Gia Bianca Stevens to talk, and to talk. So here you are. Please welcome her.
Hey everybody, how we doing? It is so good to be back here at the University of Utah because reading is what? Oh, good. We've got some family in here today. Well, it is so good to be here. So, ladies, gentlemen, and my gender non-conforming friends, welcome to the fiercest Thursday of your life. All right? How's everybody doing? All right, we want to keep the energy at an all-time high. I am a showgirl by trade, and applause is what I live on. So by all means, if something catches your fancy, react, laugh, cry. But enough about my makeup. We are going to today be reading from 3 fabulous books. And when I was reading the material to kind of decide what I was going to read to you kids, and I wanted to really speak from the heart and speak from my personal narrative. So before we kick things off, all 3 of these books contain incredible stories about queer revolutionaries throughout time. So I want to encourage you to check out this material and give them all a read for yourself. But as the outfit would suggest, I do a little bit of drag here and there. So I am going to speak to you from a drag queen's perspective, and the material that I've selected speaks about our history, our struggles, and our joy as well. And I'm going to be really excited to kind of fill some of that in with some personal narrative and experiences of my own that I've had over the years. And at the end, I'll open it up for a Q&A or a tomato throwing or however we are feeling by the end of the program. So anyway, shall we get right onto it? Okay. All right, well, let me get a little more comfortable. Let's see, dear. Thank you, Jose. And I don't know if Tanya mentioned before, but by day I am actually one of the directors at the Utah Pride Center. We are responsible for making, hi. You want any water? Oh, I'd love some, yes. And there's a handheld mic. Great, okay. We can all hear me okay, right? Okay, fabulous, okay. And I want to give a shout out to the incredible folks behind the scenes who are making the Pride Festival happen. There's a big chunk of my work family here, so can we please give a big hand for the amazing folks at the Utah Pride Center? Thank you. Oh, it's okay, we'll make it work. So, we do incredible work all year long, and I'm really excited today to, instead of collecting my booking fee, I'll be making a contribution to the Utah Pride Center so that we can continue to offer those life-affirming programs and services to queer people across the great state of Utah. All right, let's get right down to it, children. The library is open. So we are going to kick things off in true drag queen fashion by starting off with Guru by Mother RuPaul herself. Just as she is the mother of modern drag, I am the mother of modern Utah drag, or as so I've been calling myself this week. But I've been, a little bit about myself, I've been a drag queen on the scene for over a decade now. I am the Salt Lake City showgirl. I'm a former Miss Gay Utah, and in fact, you're reigning Miss Gay New York America. Yep. That was not nearly enough applause for that. Thank you. So anyway, I discovered drag back in my teens, and the art form has given me a platform and a community and a voice, and it's really my honor to be here today. So let's just get right down to it. Now, Guru is just full of a bunch of cute little draggy anecdotes, life advice, some of Ru's personal experiences, and I picked a handful of these little snippets that I want to read to you, and then fill in some of my own personal stories. So we're just going to kick things right off, shall we? I believe there's a slide for that. Oh, technology. Look at that. Okay, so let's get right down to it. From childhood, I always felt very unique. I could sense that to most people, I was invisible. They didn't know which box to put me in, so I think it was easier to just see past me. Back then, in gay male culture, If you didn't fit into any of the stereotypes, you were seen as a eunuch whose sole purpose was to serve as an accessory. It wasn't until I got into drag for the first time that people really started to take notice. That first time, and every time since, it felt like Clark Kent turning into Superman. I felt powerful. I felt that people could finally see that I was a force to be reckoned with. Doing drag doesn't change who you are, it actually reveals who you are. I want to expand on that for just a little bit. This is an art form that can mess with your head a little bit. You know, you put on all these costumes and wigs and you go out to beautiful crowds like yourselves and receive all this love and applause and adoration. But when that comes off at the end of the show, you're left with, you know, the human underneath. And so one of the ways I kind of keep myself humble in this art form is to remind myself every time I go on stage that that applause and that love is not in fact for me, it's not for Ted, it's for Ted's creation. And she looks fabulous. But, you know, so I think it's important to, you know, kind of stay grounded in this world of drag because for a lot of queer folks like myself, it can kind of be an express ticket to notoriety and fame, even if on a small scale in your local community. And I love this quote about drag doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are, because it really, really connects to my own experience. And I didn't really discover, I believe, my superpower, my calling, until I discovered the art of drag. You know, sometimes when you discover a passion, there's those feelings that it's like, you know, I'm doing exactly what I was meant to do. And the money that I've been able to fundraise, we're going to get into more of that later, but it's given me a sense of family and community unlike anything I've ever known. And so I will be truly and forever indebted to this art form for giving me a chance to make someone stay. So. All right. Now, as a kid, you know, also, you know, drag kind of, it didn't seem like that far of a leap for me, really. You know, as a kid, I was really into art and fashion and music and anime and, you know, all things weird and dark-sided and artistic. And so when I discovered that I could, you know, kind of do this for fun as an adult, it's been a really, really cool way for me to reconnect with that little kid growing up in South Jordan, not quite sure where he was going to fit in. And so, yeah, like I said, it wasn't that far of a leap for me to discover the art of drag. I was kind of a late bloomer. I didn't start till I was 26 years old. Don't let the Botox fool you. I am, in fact, I'll be 37 this year. But I was watching a little show called RuPaul's Drag Race with my then boyfriend, now husband of 3 years. And he's here today. Can everybody say hi, Scott? So if any of this offends you, it's all his fault. You can talk to him. We were watching Drag Race one night, and he's like, you know, I think you'd be really good at drag. And I'm like, oh, God, drag queens, like, they're messy, they're annoying, they're loud. But you know what else is true? Thank you. Zeb thinks I'm funny. Is that we are, in fact, the purveyors of the queer liberation movement. And it was, in fact, a trans queen of color who threw that first brick at Stonewall in 1969 New York City that began the queer liberation movement. So the freedoms that we enjoy today, the pride festivals that we participate in, we owe that all to a drag queen. All right, moving right along to my next Post-it. Okay, I've always loved beautiful clothes. Duh. Men's or women's, it doesn't matter. Just as long as they're beautiful. I adore different textures and colors. Shiny mylar, heavy tweeds, bold prints. Rue, you're speaking to my heart, girl. I love them all. Children are inherently drawn to those things, and I never lost that. My older sister reminds me all the time that I was running around the backyard in her clothes as soon as I could walk. I wasn't thinking this is drag. I was thinking this is fun. For me, the fun never stopped, and why should it? I was part of the Atlanta bohemian punk rock scene. We wore combat boots, torn dresses, and smeared lipstick. When I moved to New York City, I needed to make money, so I took a job as a go-go dancer on the bar at the Pyramid Club. I decided to switch my look to something more approachable and tip-inducing. Girl, I feel that. I chose a look somewhere between streetwalker and Soul Train dancer. Needless to say, I was a big hit. Before settling on the glamazon, my drag aesthetic was streetwalker, Soul Train dancer, still my favorite look, right? So I really love that she speaks to the chosen family that she found by way of the punk and alternative scene, and that is a big part of my story as well. You know, as we are well aware, Utah is a blood-red, church-run state, and I grew up right in the thick of it. I grew up in South Jordan, Utah. There was not a non-white house for miles. And, you know, I was, in a lot of ways, you know, kind of very very sheltered. And although I did have an amazing support system at home, I was one of those queer kids that was, very, very lucky and blessed to be embraced by the family that I was born into. However, you can't always take that love with you when you go through the hell of adolescence and start to go through middle school and high school. And as you start to discover yourself, especially as a queer person, you start to discover how the odds seem stacked against you and how out of place you can feel. And it was the alternative kids and the punk kids that were some of the first chosen family that I ever found. And back then, I had my phase with my flat iron hair and my eyeliner and my $8 hair dye from Hot Topic. So I was out running them streets looking all 50 shades of spooky, but I was doing it with kids that had my back. And although I've always been quite flamboyant, it could have been much more difficult for a queer kid like me in South Jordan, Utah. But thanks to those rock and roll and punk kids that had my back, that's where I really discovered the meaning of chosen family and the importance of finding your tribe. Hold for applause. Thank you. I'm going to be asking for a lot of that, so you know. Also, I love that she speaks to the different styles of drag and kind of finding your voice by way of visuals, right? Like I said, I started as a punk goth girl, and here I am today, the glamazon before you. I am deep-rooted in pageantry, but that's the cool thing about this art form is that it gives you permission and the right to explore gender identity and creativity and color and shape and all those beautiful things that make the world the amazing place it is to live. And what a gift it's been to really be able to appreciate beauty in all of its forms by way of dressing up like this glamazon. So we're gonna move right along to the next one. We have another slide for that too. Okay. Punk rock is more than just a style of music. It's an attitude toward life. It's a way of thinking that challenges the status quo and imagines a life outside of society's box. I've spent my life creating my own value system that has little to do with the value system of my parents. Of course, kindness is number one. Being loving is always at the top of my list. But if I tried to fit my worth into what I was taught by society, I'd be worthless. I had to learn what my true value was by forging ahead into the wild frontier. I wanted to be free, and I've done that, but there's a price you pay. You have to find a tribe. And if you don't find a tribe, you're very alone. And there have been many times when I've been alone in my journey. You have to be able to sustain yourself if you don't have other people, because your family may not understand it. Some friends won't even understand it. It does take a strong person to truly be free. Life is too short to be concerned with what other people think. This one, yes. This one really, really spoke to my core, because when I'm asked, whether it's in a professional setting or in a drag setting, what I attribute my success to, for me, the very first answer has always been finding my tribe. And that's not just chosen family, it's your coworkers, the friends you meet along the way, but it's finding those people that give you permission to shine your light as bright as you possibly can. And in a world, once again, especially as a queer person, to be living in a world today that seems stacked against you, it's that much more validating to be surrounded by those people that love you and have your back no matter what. And it's not just the people that you want to hype you up and tell you how fabulous you are all the time, which I don't tire of often, but it's the ones that will keep you real. And it's those folks that will educate you, those folks that will allow you some safe space to ask questions about pronouns and gender identity and respectful communication methods. And, those people that truly bring out your best self. And I want to, once again, I got to get all gushy and gross on my Utah Pride family for allowing, of course, Gia is fabulous, as we can see. But a lot of, it's my Utah Pride family and my amazing husband who has truly allowed Ted to shine over the last few months. So thank you folks for being here and for all the guidance and the love. That's something, before my position at the Pride Center, I was in the corporate retail world and found a lot of success there for about 2 decades. And my number one factor that made me a success in that industry was my ability to team build and surround myself with the best possible people. So welcome to my inner sanctum. All right, we're gonna move right along. Back to Mother Rue. She says, my drag is less about looking like a woman and more about saying F you to the cult of systematic masculinity I was bombarded with as a little boy. Yes, God, can I get an amen? As boys, we were taught to fit our emotions into this tiny little box because that somehow makes other people feel more comfortable. But I never wanted to do that. Truth be told, you don't have to. I feel bad for men in our culture. I think we do everyone a disservice by hiding our emotions. One thing that we're going to get to in just a little bit, we're going to talk about how drag kind of mocks identity. But once again, in a society that tells queer people, trans people that we're not valid, that our life doesn't matter, that our love doesn't matter, that our hopes and dreams don't matter, it's art forms like drag and the chosen family that are a product of queer communities that can really, really help sustain us through dark times. And, the road ahead seems uncertain and dark, but I will say this. In 1969, the last time that a bunch of terrified queer people were messed around with, they found out exactly what that was going to end like. So Stonewall Part 2 may be around the corner, but me and my queer family are ready for the fight. So, all right. I think it's, too, as one thing that drag has taught me that's been really, really a pivotal growing moment for me is what it's taught me about gender identity. And, like many of us, I grew up thinking that, there's this male and female, that's it. And fitting into one of those two boxes was necessary, especially for your survival as a queer person. And how wrong were we? I think it is so great that this art form allows people carte blanche to be creative, but also connect themselves to a piece of themselves that maybe they've been denying over the years, whether a part of their upbringing or their environment, their demographic, whatever that looks like. I think it's such a special thing and it can do so much. It can educate, it can entertain, it can advocate, it can fundraise, it can save lives, and it's something that is really, 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 really special to me. So I hope some of these pieces are kind of resonating with you, and you're able to connect with some of my story. But once again, we're gonna set some time aside for a little Q&A at the end. I'd be happy to entertain some more questions for you. One of my favorite things is about this whole, challenging what is masculine, what is feminine. One of my favorite stories about this drag thing is my mom was at work one day, and someone said to her, like, oh my God, I can't, you just support your son, running around in women's clothes. And I'm thinking, and she told me about the story, she was upset by it. I said, you know what, you can go back tomorrow and tell them how wrong they are, because this is a men's gown. This was made, for me. This is custom. You cannot find this at Old Navy. This is custom, so this is in fact a men's gown, and it looks fabulous. Okay, just a few more words from Mother Rue. Quick reminder, don't dumb down. Own your greatness. We often play small so as not to threaten other people. We don't want to intimidate them by our brightness, but the truth is, you do them and yourself a disservice by dimming what you've been given. Your intelligence, your light, those are your gifts. I'm just gonna keep this one really short and sweet because this is this art form has really, really allowed me to lean into my own gifts, and it's allowed me to have some truly life-changing experiences. For example, I was a Miss Gay Utah in 2018. Thank you. During my year, I raised more money for queer charities than any of the Miss Gay Utahs that had come before me. Thank you. In 2019, I was the MC for the annual Equality Utah Allies Gala, and this one is really special to me because that night, nearly $500,000 was raised to eradicate the horrific practice of conversion therapy in the state of Utah. And the very next year, in 2020, conversion therapy was banned statewide as the law of the land. And is now codified thanks to the work that Equality Utah has done. So it's allowed me to wear many crowns and travel coast to coast. I've literally won pageants in New York City and done parades in Palm Springs. And it's been really a gateway for me to kind of discover the world. But, all that glitz and glamour kind of fades away for moments like I'm about to describe. Now, I've been involved with the Pride Center for many, many years before I came on board the payroll, right? So I was, a client. I remember back when the Pride Center was the little coffee shop just north of the Gateway. I'm really aging myself there, but I've really been a part of the Pride Center's, growing up story, even when she was a naughty teenager. And, so to be on the side of it and to be helping to create the festival has been such a gift. But at this particular point in time, I was a regular performer for the annual Queer Prom, sponsored by the Utah Pride Center. It's a community event because most of us, I never made it to my prom. I was one of those queer kids that just did not feel like I fit in. So, what a gift that, these queer adults and youths can experience the prom as the gender or with the gender they were intended, that they truly wanted to be with. And anyway, so I did my little show. There was about 1,400 kids there that night. This was at the Salt Lake Library downtown. Did the dramatic, diva on the staircase moment and, did the show, had a great time. The kids got their life and cheers, hoots, hollers. It was fabulous. So I'm on my way out of the library to hit up that Del Taco, and I get stopped for a photo. This adorable group of kids like, oh, can we please get a photo? You're my favorite. You're my favorite. Oh, of course, of course, of course. And then another group of kids, and then oh, can we get solo shots? And then another group. So before I knew it, there was a line. It was a 2-hour wait just to get a photo with me, which was a mind blow in and of itself. But about halfway through the line, I took a photo, and this girl had tears in her eyes, and she just said, "Can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Absolutely." So, we step outside the line. She looks me in the eye, and she just says, "I know you don't know me. I've been following you since you started drag, and you doing you so fiercely and so unapologetically is what inspired me to come out as a trans woman, as a trans girl." So she was like 14 at the time. And of course, I just broke down. We bawled, we hugged, we embraced. But in that moment, I recognized that the wigs, the jewelry, the gowns, that is all secondary to the impact that we can have. And living so unapologetically and uniquely and authentically ourselves, if that allows even just one person the comfort level to explore their own gender identity, I have absolutely accomplished what I was sent to this earth to do. All right. I feel at my core, we're back to Rue now, okay? I feel at my core that I am a teacher. I am here to be a conduit. I know how to make magic. I have the ability to help people cross over to their greatness and realize their potential. My presence in the pop landscape has allowed people to see themselves as their superhero. Drag for me has always been my superhero costume. I feel powerful in drag. I think other people see that and believe they can do the same thing, which speaks to the story I just told you. And so what a gift this crazy life is, right? So, if we can just, if I as a cisgendered gay male can put on a gown and inspire someone else to live as authentically themselves, I don't think I could ask for much more there. So, yes. We got one final passage from Mother Rue before we move on to our next publication. Painting the house won't fix a shaky foundation. I'm going to say that again. Painting a house won't fix a shaky foundation. Your foundation must be built on something solid, and that solid foundation is love. Not the romantic, rom-com, fairy tale love, but the frequency that runs through and connects each of us. You must clear a path within yourself for that frequency to live in you, and so that your body can communicate that to the world. That is your job. Ultimately, it's about the love you give and the love you allow yourself to receive. Everything else fades away. And that has been Guru by RuPaul. All right, what do you think? Couple more? You gotta want it. All right. Up next is a children's book. This is called Rainbow Revolutionaries, and it features quick little one-page bios about some incredible people who have shaped queer history. This was a tough one to get through because a lot of these names and situations were news to me as a 36-year-old, gay guy. So I want to encourage everyone, it's never too late to learn something new. It's never too late to educate yourself. And this, even though it's a kid's book, it really, really did a lot for opening my eyes and realizing how long and rich queer history is. So I'm going to read these in a specific order because these stories speak more to the drag experience, which I know a little bit about, and we can kind of fill in some narratives. So I'm going to tell you about 4 incredible people and how they contributed to queer life, okay? First, we're going to go talk about Jose Sarria. Jose led an incredible life as an activist drag queen, even though he never thought that's how his life would turn out. Jose was an American tutor for folks learning English, and one of his students was an Austrian, Paul Kolisch. They fell in love. But Jose felt drawn to Paul's native Europe after the US entered World War II. Jose felt like the right thing to do was to join the military. So, a fashionista, he chose the Navy because he thought they had the most attractive uniforms. When they didn't accept him because he was too short, he ended up in the Army, such drab uniforms, serving for 5 years. Even after all that time, Jose and Paul were still in love. They would have gotten married, but that was illegal in the 1940s. Then tragedy struck. On Christmas Day, 1947, Paul was driving to see Jose when a drunk driver hit his car and killed him. Jose was heartbroken. To add to the devastation, Paul's family didn't allow Jose to have any of Paul's inheritance. If they had been allowed to get married, Jose would have gotten everything, but instead, Paul's family did. Unsure about what to do with the rest of his life, Jose took the suggestion of a drag performer friend to enter a drag competition. Jose came in second, which I know way too much about, as a beautiful 23rd alternate to Miss Gay America this year. Jose came in second and won a contract to perform for 2 weeks. It was the beginning of the career that would define his life and change many others' lives. At the Black Cat, a bar in Oakland across the bay from San Francisco, Jose lit up the stage in a dress and red high heels. He didn't only entertain, he inspired. He gave speeches to the bar's customers about how it was okay to be gay, something most of them had never heard before from anyone in their life. He even tricked the police one night by having all the drag queens wear pins that said, "I am a boy," so they couldn't be accused of fraud. The supposed reason for laws against cross-dressing. None of the queens were arrested that night. Jose took his activism a step further and became the first openly gay person to run for office in 1961. Jose wanted his people to have a voice. He didn't win, but he got thousands of votes that proved it wasn't impossible for a gay person to win. 16 years later, Harvey Milk would win that seat in the same city of San Francisco. All right, let's move right along to Harvey Milk, shall we? Growing up in New York, Harvey Milk never imagined he would change the world. Along with his brother, Harvey helped out at the family's department store, Milk's. It was only after he moved to San Francisco that he saw a lot of discrimination. Many people there treated others who didn't look or act just like them differently, and Harvey didn't like it. Harvey made his home in a neighborhood called the Castro and started a camera shop, even though he knew nothing about photography. As a gay man, Harvey liked that the Castro was becoming a neighborhood filled with people just like him. Still, Harvey wanted to change the discrimination he saw. The government and police weren't treating gay people like him fairly, so Harvey decided to run for office. People held signs and wore buttons with his name on them, including Harvey's intern, Cleve Jones. Harvey wanted to be part of the board of supervisors, who makes decisions about how things should be in San Francisco. An openly gay person had never been part of the city government before, but Harvey thought the people of the Castro deserved a representative like them. He didn't win the election. He ran again and lost a second time, but Harvey persisted and finally won in 1977. As part of San Francisco's Board of Supervisors, he helped to make laws that treated everyone fairly. The gay people of San Francisco finally had a voice. He was one of the very first openly gay people ever elected to government in the United States. Sadly, Harvey's first year in office was also his last. A man with hate in his heart ended Harvey's life, but even Harvey's death helped people. People came together to make sure Harvey's work for equality continued. Harvey gave people hope, and that hope never died. Ladies and gentlemen, my gender nonconforming friends, Harvey Milk. Okay, 2 more selections from this book, and then we're going to wrap things out with something called the Queer Bible, and that's not just Madonna's greatest hits collection. All right? Okay, let's chat about our friend Sylvia Rivera. Sylvia left her home in New Jersey forever when she was just 10 years old. Her mother had died when she was 3, and her grandmother, who she lived with, was cruel. Sylvia would wear makeup outside the house and then take it off before getting home because her grandmother wouldn't approve, since Sylvia was assigned male at birth. She had to be herself, so she left for Greenwich Village in New York City. There, she thankfully found a close-knit community of drag queens and trans women who welcomed her, including the woman who had become her best friend, Marsha P. Johnson. Sylvia was a teenager when she and Marsha were at the Stonewall Rebellion of 1969. They fought back against the police, who constantly harassed their LGBTQ+ community. Those riots were an important moment that sparked the modern movement for LGBTQ+ rights. In the summer after Stonewall, Sylvia got involved with the new LGBTQ+ groups forming in New York City. In 1971, she worked very hard with the group Gay Activists Alliance to get gay and trans rights recognized in the city. But the group decided it would be too hard to get trans rights, so they dropped them and only pursued getting gay rights. It was a really mean move. Sylvia was hurt. Her own community had betrayed her. Sylvia worked the rest of her life for LGBTQ+ rights, including gay rights, even though many gay rights activists continued to ignore trans rights. Sylvia spoke about how trans people were experiencing violence and discrimination, and only other trans people seemed to want to help. Sylvia did all she could for trans people who were homeless, like she was, or in jail, like often she was. Her work is so respected today that there is even an organization doing trans rights work that is named after her, the Sylvia Rivera Law Project. What would you do if the people who thought were your allies didn't fight for you? This is Sylvia Rivera. Now, this is something I say at my show every Sunday, Quorum of the Queens, Utah's best-selling drag brunch since 2019, every Sunday at the Exchange. No. But this is a message to all of my allies in the audience. Now, allyship has taken on a whole new identity, and it's the allyship of 2020 is no longer enough. So as much as we appreciate you being here at events like this and supporting local queer artists at drag shows, we need the allyship to be louder and prouder than it ever has before. Unapologetic, relentless, and constant until we have the same rights as everybody else. So I need your voices loud and proud in the streets, on social media, and in the voting booth where it counts the most. All right, one more selection from Rainbow Revolutionaries. Marsha was a bright light of Greenwich Village in New York City. She lit up everywhere she went with her big smile and kind personality. She often dressed up with flowers in her hair and fun outfits. Everyone loved Marsha, and she loved everyone. One time, Marsha was down to her last $2, and she used it to buy a box of cookies. She gave out all the cookies to others on the street, not leaving any for herself. She knew what it was like to be hungry, and she cared about helping anyone in the same situation, even if she was hungry herself. Marsha, who was at the 1969 Stonewall Rebellion and maybe even helped start it, she was really close friends with Sylvia Rivera, and the two of them saw their trans community struggling. So many young trans people in New York City were homeless, and Marsha and Sylvia wanted to give them a place to be safe off the streets. Whenever they got a hotel room, they would sneak kids in, up to 50 people at a time, in 2 hotel rooms. In 1970, they raised the money to rent a 4-bedroom apartment they called Star House. There was no heat or electricity to start out, but it was more than many who stayed there had since they left their homes. Marsha and Sylvia worked hard to get enough money to keep Star House open, and they were the very first group to work to help trans homeless youth in New York City. Marsha is remembered as an important activist for the LGBTQ+ community and a loving mother figure for many. Marsha P. Johnson, everybody. All right. And I want to reiterate, this book was inspiring as heck. So please, please see the book table, check out this material. This one is something that I'll be keeping in my office. So if you want to come by for a read, I will first read your outfit, and then we can read from the book. All right. One more. So we have got the Queer Bible. Now this one was really, really enlightening because it is actually essays by queer people about queer people. But we are going to talk about 2 incredible superstars all at once because the essay I've chosen to read was written by Sir Elton John, and it is about the legendary drag queen, Divine. Oh, you're too kind. Save some for later. All right, here we go. And this is my last selection, and then, like I said, we will gladly turn it over for a little Q&A, okay? My relationship, in the words of Elton John, my relationship with drag has been a lifelong love affair. The first time I ever saw anyone in drag was the early 70s. My manager, John Reed, took me to Danny LaRue's club in London. Hello, you. I was a very sheltered gay man back then, and I didn't know much about this sort of thing. But schooled on the kind of campness sequestered away on Radio 4 like Kenneth Williams, I was hungry for it all. I had no idea real drag queens existed until that visit started the ball rolling. I quickly developed favorites. Lee Sutton at the Vauxhall Tavern, Regina Fong at the Black Cap in Camden, who I would, incidentally, later get to appear with at a Stonewall benefit. The glamour of drag connected with something deep inside me. I can't remember the first time I dressed in drag privately, but it soon transpired into a public habit and to this day comprises some of my happiest memories. If there was a chance to drag up, I would take it. I'd rented a house in Saint-Tropez on holiday with my friend Tony King, who's looked after me throughout my career. The first time I met John Lennon, another of Tony's designated charges, was on a video shoot for the Mind Games album, where Tony was in full drag as the Queen. So Tony and I decided to throw a drag party in Saint-Tropez. The next day, I took some of the other people out in drag and had pictures taken privately by the swimming pool on the diving board. Unbeknownst to us, there were paparazzi in the bushes, and the photos ended up plastered all over Paris Match the next week. Another time in Hawaii, I came down to dinner at the Four Seasons in full drag, looking like Audrey Hepburn, I am so sure. I appeared on the front of Richard Avedon's Versace book in a sequin dress. I can make reasonable claims to being an actual cover girl, darling. I have paid my drag dues. When I came out as gay and met John Reed, he had so many gay friends and employees, it felt natural to give each other drag names. In a way, designating someone with a drag name was my way of telling them I love them. Drag is a communal sport. I'd like to get everyone involved. Tony became Joy, and I became Sharon because I was so common. Rod Stewart was always Phyllis. Freddie Mercury became Melina after Melina Mercouri, the Greek actress and singer. He was a real Melina, I can assure you. John Lennon became Carol Dakota after his New York building, the Dakota. If you can't think of the correct name, you go to the surname first and work it out from there. Not everyone gets a drag name, but all of my dearest friends are bequeathed with one. Glenn was the actor. The performer was Divine, the character that evolved over the years in partnership with John Waters. I lovingly called him Divvy. For Glenn, pronouns were interchangeable. In gay culture, that's how we spoke to one another back then, by switching genders and nicknames. Divine and Glenn were always inextricably linked. Hi, that's a big word before noon. Inextricably linked. Separate, but the same. Two sides of the same coin. The stage persona and the person are interdependent, yet share a strange symbolic relationship. Glenn eventually wanted to move forward as a serious actor, but owed his fame to his alter ego. It's a rare joy when you love the art, get to meet the artist, and love them too, and that's what happened when I met Divine. A friendship blossomed. Nights out on the town with Freddie Mercury and Divvy followed a certain rhythm. Divine would call, his raspy, lilting voice almost running his words together. Can I come over to smoke a joint? He would. Then we'd go out to dinner. Divvy was so lovely to be with. He was a very gentle character, nothing like as flamboyant as his film persona. Then again, a lot of performers aren't. I'm not either. It was on stage and on screen that he expressed himself, his alter ego screaming to get out. He just wanted to be himself. That is exactly who I was when I started wearing the costumes and flamboyant stage wear that would become synonymous with Elton John. In my shows, I'm forever stuck behind a piano, so the outfits had to count. I looked to people like Liberace, to anyone who had that essence of glamour within them and weren't scared to let it out. Drag artists performed gender in exaggerated expressions, which was exactly what I wanted to do. I lived my life so playfully and excessively in my 20s and 30s because I had never had the courage to live it in my teenage years. Like Divvy, I grew up in the 50s, a conservative era. I knew nothing about sex and wasn't allowed to wear the clothes I wanted to. Glenn's childhood had been similar in that respect, and I could see that Divine's spirit was very close to mine. For both of us, as soon as we could, we just burst onto the scene. Boy, did we make up for lost time. In 1976, I invited Divvy on stage to perform with me for an encore at Madison Square Garden. In hindsight, perhaps I should have worn my band first. Still a cult star under Waters' direction, confined to the art house extremes, they had no idea who Divine was. I sat at my piano and watched in awe as she climbed up the stairs to the stage in an amazing foil dress. One of her heels snapped on the stairs, but of course she styled it out, screaming into her mic, expletive, expletive, expletive. She rolled on stage, and you could visibly read, "Who the expletive is this?" on the band's faces. They had absolutely no idea. That night was just me and Divi having fun on stage in front of thousands of people. Divi set something of a precedent at that show. On a later night of my tour, I came on stage in drag as Tina Turner in full "What's Love Got to Do with It" regalia. Skirt, wig, everything. I didn't tell my band about that either. I just arrived on stage, sat down, and nobody knew who the expletive I was until I started playing. The New York club scene in the 70s was incredible. It was all about the music. Crisco Disco, Les Jardins, and 12 West were fabulous. Even though one night Crisco Disco refused Divi and me entry. We'd gone out for a lovely dinner. We had both stolen ashtrays from the restaurant. We turned up at Crisco Disco, Divine in a caftan, me in some colorful, outrageous outfit. The doorman shouted, "What do you think this is, Halloween? You ain't coming in here like this." And Divine yelled, "Expletive." Exactly in the manner of Dawn Davenport in Female Trouble. And we both threw and smashed our ashtrays and hot-footed it off to 12 West to dance the night away. Divine and I certainly shared compulsive behaviors. I completely understand where Divi ended up. I was just as ravenous for my addictions as he was for his. Luckily, they didn't kill me because I saw the light. For Divi, eating got so out of control that he became very unhealthy. I didn't do drugs all the time and was lucky in the sense that I worked frequently on the road. If drugs had kept me from touring, I'd be dead by now. There were periods where I got and stayed clean, but I always went back to the drugs. I finally got clean for good in 1990. It's different for everyone. As much as I love Divi, I can't tell you what was going on inside him. Divine passed away from a heart attack in 1988, just after the triumphant Hairspray premiere. It was the night before shooting was to begin on a role in the sitcom Married with Children. Divi was about to finally fulfill his dream of performing as Glenn, as himself, out of drag in a major role on television. For me, Glenn's death will always feel tied up with the height of the AIDS epidemic. It isn't just coincidence of timing at the height of the pandemic. His life and career were cut short just as he was breaking into the mainstream on the eve of his acceptance as Glenn. That feeling of lives being cut short, abbreviated at the precise moment they were blossoming, was commonplace. It was simultaneously heartbreaking. In the 80s, we lost an entire generation of young gay men in their prime. It was a period of intense loss, horrific both for me personally and for the gay community as a whole. I was losing 2 or 3 people a week, and it was all so overwhelming. The press called AIDS the gay plague, as if we had caused it. No one cared about what was happening. It was frightening. I didn't do enough. You had to get your hands dirty. You had to be there on the front line. Eventually, the incredible ACT UP activist Larry Kramer became a good friend and ally, but I should have been there for him years before I was. I started the Elton John AIDS Foundation to try to make up for lost time. I'm not particularly religious, but I built a little chapel in my house full of plaques of people who had died of AIDS, the names of people I loved. I go there to remind myself that there's still a lot more work to be done. We've made some incredible advances medically, of course. We now have PrEP and antiviral drugs, but we still have to address the stigma and fear which prevent people from getting tested, and the lack of education that prevents people from understanding that being HIV positive isn't the death sentence it once was. There's still a lot of work to do, but it is not insurmountable. As a community, we can stand together to face it. Divine was the best of us. He was so brave, unique, and fearless. He laughed in the face of a conservative society which ridiculed and rejected him. But Divi internalized a lot of that trauma and pain that certainly led to his premature death. That's why we need to protect the next generation of LGBTQ+ people, especially those challenging gender norms, so that they can go on to have long, happy, brilliant lives, living however they want to. I rewatched Female Trouble about a month ago with my husband, David, and was utterly overwhelmed by how ahead of its time it was. Divine was a ray of sunshine, and today I see so many drag queens performing and non-binary and transgender activists doing the most incredibly brave things. They are the trailblazers, and we must applaud and support them. That's what the Elton John AIDS Foundation does. We want the people pushed out by society, the people John Waters loved and championed, to know that they are worth. No one gets left behind is our motto, and that's what my life is all about. Whatever you've been through, whatever you've done, everyone deserves redemption. Divine's fearlessness inspires me to this day. Divi's spirit will linger forever. Glenn was the lesson to us all. And that has been Drag Queen Storytime at the Marriott Library. I would be delighted. How much time do we have for questions?
We have until 1 o'clock, so this is, Q&A and
Great.
socializing. And
I would love, I'd love to take some questions if you have any for the well-dressed gentlemen.
I will bring the mic to those with questions.
Thank you.
Where'd you get the dress? Like, who did you commission?
Oh, this is custom, darling.
Yeah.
So,
Who did it?
I work with a handful of designers. This lovely gentleman is based in Chicago. His name is Eddie Couture. He's done a handful of pieces for me, and he's got all my curves and swerves figured out.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah, custom, yeah. Anybody else want to talk fashion?
This is kind of a serious question,
'Kay.
but with the recent attacks on drag as its entirety with policies and everything, what would you suggest people do that can't affect policy to do to try to work against this attack on drag that's been happening the past year?
Simply put, I would say make as much noise as often as possible to as many people as will listen to you. Once again, I want to remind you folks about the life-changing experience I had when that trans girl told me that by following me, she was inspired to embrace her own trans identity. And those moments can be a lot more commonplace if we just find a little more common ground. So, like I said, be loud, be vocal, be regular in your communication, in your support for this beautiful community. However that looks like. Social media, yes? Oh, well, honey, it's because I'm a showgirl. Right. So yes, I would just say, social media, whatever communication methods you use, like I said, a little word of support goes a long way. And this art form has also taught me that you never know who's watching you. So, anybody else?
Oh, Jordan also has a mic too. He's right there.
Oh, we'll get to you just 1 second.
How do you practice hope?
How do I practice hope? It's a good one. Ooh, we're going deep today. I'm not going to lie, it can be tough. Sometimes seemingly impossible. One of my wishes for my community is that we start to practice a lot more empathy and a lot more listening, because sadly, a lot of the strife comes from within our community. Sadly, in some way, the call has always been coming from inside the house. And when you wake up every day and you are confronted with shooting after shooting and hateful bill after hateful bill, it can seem impossible. And the way I navigate that is by looking for the little wins. Because if you look at something like policy change, that is a huge, huge, huge fish to fry. But if you look for those little glimmers of hope in the daily, little things like, one thing that I do if I'm feeling down is to try to build somebody else up. So, if I see somebody looking incredibly sensational on Facebook, oh my God, love the outfit, slay queen, whatever, I look for those opportunities to lift somebody else up, which, will help me, like I said, when I'm down. So, as cheesy as it sounds, it's those little daily affirmations and those little wins that keep me going.
How has it been watching drag evolve from when you started, as well as for yourself, and then also how do you think are some ways that drag is going to continue evolving?
I think drag has become a derailed train in the best beautiful way, because when I started, one of my first dressing rooms was a beer fridge, and I started at a time when drag really wasn't embraced and loved in Salt Lake City. I was a part of the very first drag brunch that Utah ever had, and now there are dozens of them. So to be witness to that growth has been really, really cool. And to see so many queer kids expressing themselves artistically through this art form really, really has me inspired that our community is in good hands. So I think drag is going to be an unstoppable force, and it's starting to infiltrate its way into many areas of mainstream culture. I mean, there's folks on my Facebook feed, like there's drag queen realtors. There's people like getting in drag and going out and selling a house. There's drag queens selling Tupperware. There's drag queens doing the most, you know? So I think that by this point, I think the dam is broken and the floodgates have been released, and I think there's no turning back. Drag is here and queer, and we're not going anywhere. Anybody else?
I was just going to ask, who is someone you look up to, either a celebrity or someone in your life?
I'm going to get cheesy for a second and give some love to my incredible husband, Scott Alexander. This man is my hero and my best friend and my lover and my confidant. And we have been together for 13 years. And it is just as difficult as they say. You know, getting together is easy, staying together is, it can be difficult. But not only did he introduce me to this art form that has given me a platform and exposed me to an amount of love I never knew was possible, he is the smartest, kindest, gentlest man that I know. I am so lucky to get to wake up to him every day, and I love you with all my heart, Scott.
I think I have the next questions online, and then we can go to you. Is that okay? So I have a question here, if you don't mind looking at
Sure.
our Instagram. How can someone get a start in the queer rights scene in Utah?
I would say get involved with our local organizations that champion the queer community. Utah Pride Center, Equality Utah, Utah AIDS Foundation, HRC. There's plenty of chapters here ways to get involved. So I'm obviously partial to Utah Pride Center because of the amazing work that we do. So I would say start there, visit utahpride.org. We have an incredible festival coming up, and that is a great chance for you and you and you and you and you and all of you to come get involved. Over here?
I've got one. So how would you say that the queer culture and the queer community in Salt Lake City specifically compares to the rest of the country? Because I know Salt Lake City has a lot of connotations involved with the whole church and everything. So
Yeah.
how do you think that affects the queer community here?
It's enormous, and I think the queer community here is so unapologetically queer because we spent much of our lives under that church state oppression. So I think a lot of ways it's kind of a counterculture move to just be radically queer, radically ourselves, radically drag, whatever that looks like for you. And that can be both good and bad. You know, our queer community is in fact a lot bigger than I think most people realize or assume. And there's a lot of love to be had. There's also quite a bit of queer on queer hatred that I think stands to be silenced because we've got to clean our own house first. We cannot advocate for policy change on a national scale while we are throwing bricks at each other. So as beautiful and rich as it is, I would say it's big and impressive in its scale. And I think that I say this with as much love as I have in my heart, but I think this Utah queer community is much more capable of much bigger things than we realize right now. And if we can find some more common ground and band together and start supporting each other in a way that's indicative of the Stonewall Rebellion, I think we're going to have a very, very bright future. Anybody else?
So I'm not from Utah. I'm visiting right now.
Welcome.
I am from the state next door that we have a gay governor, and every time states enact another law, he enacts a law that makes it more safe, and so people flee to our state. What can we do as a state that is very proactive in these things? What can we do to help states like Utah to stop people to having to flee to our state?
Yeah. I would just say share your stories with us. Like clearly there's something to be learned there, and you guys have figured a lot of really good things out. So, connect with those folks on the front lines that are making policy change and impacting it the most. And don't shy away from sending a friendly message of advice. And tell us what worked for you, and hopefully we can do a little bit of the same. Yeah, I would just say it's just I think we don't have to ask for permission. We can express love and support anytime we want. And sometimes those messages might hit the audience right when they need to. So, there could be, I sure have felt hopeless, a lot of times with the laws in Utah. But, if someone were to come to my inbox with a great little story about what they're doing to enact change where they live, I think that could be really, really uplifting. Yeah.
I have another question online.
Yes. I am just going to, my earlobes have had it, so we're gonna dress down for a little bit. Still fierce, right?
Yes. Okay, so this question, this person asks, are there any drag brunches in Salt Lake City open to minors? So in this case would be a 17-year-old, but in general.
No, not that I know of. My show specifically is for, it's in a 21 and up environment. However, if you follow me on socials at Gia Bianca Stevens or at Courtroom of the Queens, my drag show has been officially welcomed back to the Gallivan Center for the 3rd year in a row. We will be bringing back, yes, we'll be bringing back our drag summer concert series coming to you in July and September. Free to attend, all ages drag show.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Awesome. I just want to start by saying just thank you for being here. You shouldn't have to be brave, but it's very brave of you for you to be here. And secondly, I don't want to say I'm happy, but it was nice for you to speak to kind of the queer on queer hate that exists here. I'm from California, I'm from the Bay Area, so this is a much different experience for me, especially as a Latinx person of color. As a leader in this community, what would you say to help bridge those conversations on both sides, as far as folks who are coming from totally different environments and those of us who are from here kind of interacting with kind of different modalities of queerness?
I think a really good catalyst to start some of those conversations would be acknowledging our shared fear, acknowledging our shared struggle. I think there's a handful of folks that are, so quick to look for a flag to identify with and fly under, and we have all these beautiful facets of our queer community, which is it's wonderful, but that doesn't mean that we all can't fly under the same flag. And I think once again, as queer people, we're conditioned, the world feels like it's stacked against us. We're conditioned to be tough, and we're conditioned to keep our walls up and keep people out. I can't speak for everybody, but by and large, a big piece of the queer struggle is rooted in shame and fear and trauma. And so I think if we acknowledge those things right out the chute, it will humanize us all. And I would like to hope that could create more of a solid foundation for healthier dialogue. So I think maybe before we start talking to and at each other, we should listen to each other, find some commonality so that when we show up on Capitol Hill, we are as one solid, indestructible unit. Gia Bianca for President 2024. No. Can you imagine? Any other questions?
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
That's good. I'm good too. So earlier you were talking about how a lot of your identity and stuff came out of community as a kid, as a teenager, and Utah is rough with queer kids and fostering those types of communities. What work is being done to increase that, and what do you think everyday people can do to help with that, with queer kids?
Do not wait for an invitation to get involved. Do not wait for a call from a Pride Center or an Equality Utah or a neighbor. Reach out. Use your voice on social media. If you see someone struggling, reach out. Ask them if they're okay. We've got to start being more vocal and assuming a lot less. So I feel like that's kind of a repeat message in a lot of my answers today. But I think it's absolutely how I feel. We've got to be louder. We've got to be more expressive and more intentional in the way we address each other and take care of each other. So I think just being loud, and don't wait for someone to invite you. Queer people have never been welcomed. We've had doors slammed in our face our entire lives. So what do? We build our own house. Anybody else?
So we've talked a lot about some of the challenges of being queer in Utah and how it's some of the drawbacks, but I just wanted to know if there's anything you really like about Utah, I guess what keeps you here?
I love Utah. I mean, Utah's home. I'm born and raised. And although, we have talked a lot about, like the darkness that surrounds the queer story, but the reality is Utah is a lot more, the life that I live and the people I surround myself with, that's the Utah that I hear about on the news and on Capitol Hill, that's not the Utah that I live in. We talked a lot today about kind of finding my tribe, and Utah is rich with amazing, beautiful, creative, talented, passionate people. And when I do an event like my All Ages show at Gallivan Center, for example, and there's over 1,000 people there, a lot of them are kids, and there's 2- and 3-year-olds running up with a dollar bill in their hand to tip the drag queen, that is some of the most magical, that's one of the most magical things you can experience. That to me is proof positive that there is a lot more love out there than I think we give Utah credit for. And I think it's amazing that we can live in a state like this, and I can prance my gay self around a stage in the middle of downtown Salt Lake City for people of all ages. That's a pretty special thing. So yeah, there's a lot of beauty here. Just as majestic and powerful as our scenery, the folks that live here are just as beautiful.
Can you hear me? Okay. Are you worried about all of the anti-queer and anti-trans bills, and are you worried for the future?
I'm terrified. I'm absolutely terrified, and I mean that with every bit of sincerity. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we are what feels like on the cusp of another Stonewall. I can't believe that the love I have for my husband is now once again going to be up for legal debate. I can't believe some of the hateful messages that I get in my position at the Pride Center. I can't believe some of what's going on. It truly is shocking and terrifying. But maybe this is the catalyst that we need to finally get past the labels and get to the heart of what makes the queer community so special on a global scale. So yes, I'm terrified.
What are some ways that aspiring queens could get their start, specifically here in Utah, because it feels a little bit harder to kind of get your way in here?
As a gal who's been doing this for a good minute in Utah, there's a lot of opportunities actually. So it may seem, a little difficult to navigate, but like I've said a few times today, show up. You've got to put yourself at the door and knock, ring the bell, and if the door's not open, build it, right? I started this, I didn't have a drag mother or anybody kind of showing me the ways in drag. YouTube was my drag mom. And now there's so much technology, and drag is such a widely respected and recognized art form now that there's a lot more resources. So start with the makeup tutorials, but you're allowed to find your passion in your voice and what makes your drag unique. You do not have to be a jump, split, and dance and twirl and buck and diva to have a successful career. I've been doing this for 10 years and have never once done a jump split because that would put me in the hospital. But no, there's also a thriving queer youth scene here, and there's a lot of amazing, beautiful things happening in the world of new up-and-coming drag artists. And as someone who is now the old dame in the drag scene, it's awesome to see folks like yourself step up and slay. So yeah, I would just say, once again, there's a good friend of mine, one of her pieces of advice that she gives anyone setting a goal, start anywhere. Start anywhere. There is no checklist, there is no method, there's no protocol for how to express yourself creatively by way of fashion, makeup, and wigs. Yeah. Yes, over here. Right back here. Okay.
Hearing a lot of the worry about attacks on the trans community or the drag community. Like one of my biggest things that I stress, sorry, it's a comment, not so much a question.
It's all right.
Is
we're all up here. We're sharing is caring.
Is being willing to advocate, if you can, to change the narrative that the the people that are like on the attack. I'm like, I mean, it's hard, but I'd like to believe that I've changed views somewhat online, being willing to tell people that trans people are just like any normal humans trying to get along in this world, and that drag shows are not there to, like indoctrinate children and stuff, and it's not all about sexualization. But the highlight of one of your shows has been seeing you run around in heels. Like, I didn't know somebody could run like that in heels. But I'm here for it, and I'm a big mental health advocate too. So reaching out and being able to try and use those resources or encourage other people to use them as well is very important, because not everybody seeks support on their own.
Good point. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for being here. Oh, is it mine? Okay, great, thank you. So I'm a librarian, and it's been a couple hard years for libraries. We've been getting, hundreds of challenges per library, especially for school libraries. And so I've thought about this a lot, of where the fear is coming from, because books have been around forever, libraries have been around forever. And I think a lot of it, for people who are targeting libraries, is it's misplaced fear about our information environment with TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and Discord, and parents are like, I can't control what my kids have access to, and books seem like a thing they can control. Similarly, I feel like drag has gotten dragged into the culture wars.
Yeah.
And yet I'm here, and it's like, you're a beautiful person reading beautiful stories. What are they so afraid of? If you had to take a guess at what they're actually afraid of, how would you summarize that?
Fear of the unknown. We are only products of our environment if we choose to remain as such. And, you're not beholden to the family you were born into. You owe nothing to the town that you were raised in. And if equality is something that you crave, you are allowed to go out into the world and seek that and engage in healthy conversations with queers, with librarians, with whoever's got a piece of knowledge and advice to offer. But I think pretty much all fear stems from lack of understanding and just lack of knowledge. And it really doesn't. Sharing a human experience has become far too difficult. So. I think a little more listening, a little more empathy is going to get us a long way. But yeah, I feel the pressures of the culture war every day. So thank you for fighting the good fight as well.
I'm gonna ask a fun one.
Cool.
If you had all the resources in the world at your fingertips, what would be your dream performance? What would that look like?
I can't breathe. Let's see. I am so I can't speak for everybody, but a lot of gays in my community, we have our sovereign diva, right? You got your Cher gays, your Madonna gays. I am an out and proud Kylie Minogue gay. So, if I could recreate any performance for myself, I would recreate her 2010 Aphrodite tour with the hydraulics and the really, really cute boys with no shirts, and the costumes and the feathers, they were all designed by Dolce & Gabbana. I kind of discovered that concert right at the cusp of me discovering drag. So a lot of that showgirl identity is it just runs through my veins. So but that would be it. Or Bombshell the musical. Yeah.
So you talked about growing up in South Jordan, and I don't live in South Jordan, but I go to school in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering what it's something me personally I can do to try to combat the anti-LGBTQIA plus I guess you could say atmosphere in my own school.
Make as many queer friends as you possibly can, so that everyone can, as you're walking through the halls and engaging with these folks, it's no secret that you are 100% there for the queer community, and they're humans just like the rest of us. So, making those friends will allow you to engage in healthier conversations and educate yourself more about, our struggles and our fears, but also our hopes and dreams. So, and also, who wouldn't want this to be their best friend? Right. So yeah, I would just say make as many gay friends as possible, and you've got a light that shines so bright, so you're gonna have no problem attracting all the friends you want.
I have a fun one.
Yay.
What's your favorite Madonna song?
Oh my God. Okay. Vogue down, Vogue or nothing. That's actually, I did audition for RuPaul's Drag Race once, and one of the questions was, what were your top 3 lip sync songs of all time? One of my answers was Vogue by Madonna. So good question, and I really, really appreciate your young, adorable self knowing who Madonna is. Yes, yes. Anybody else? Sure.
Okay, inspired by your shout out to Madonna's Vogue, I'm thinking about the long, rich history of Blackness and drag, and how oftentimes what we see now is whiteness, right? And an erasure of the contemporary and the historical roots of Blackness. And so what are ways that you, as a leader in multiple ways in our community, are finding to either sneak in that history or like resist the erasure, right? Because I think that especially in places like Utah, where we have to make decisions, we feel like we have to make decisions all the time about like how far to push. One of the places we compromise is around centering whiteness, because that seems easier.
Mhm.
And I imagine that's something you have to contend with every day as a leader in all the different ways that you are. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so something that I don't want to say taking advantage of my position to do, but something that I'm using my position as a Pride Center entertainment director to do is when it comes to booking local talent. This year's Pride Festival is going to be all queer and all Utah. And while being, especially cognizant of POC performers, because they have not, to your point, they've oftentimes been erased out of the limelight. So I'm using my position as an entertainment director to give Pride Festival the queerest, most colorful set of local talent that we've ever had on stage. So that's just one thing that I'm doing to give those folks the spotlight they deserve.
This kind of builds off that last question, but do you have a favorite movie or TV show that features LGBTQ or POC representation?
Yeah, actually, speaking about Black queer culture, one of my biggest inspirations, there's a movie called Paris is Burning. It's a documentary about the ballroom scene in New York. This is Pose, but the unedited version, right? This was Pose before Pose was Pose. And it gives you a really, really sobering look at queer culture. And then, obviously, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert is a timeless classic.
So this is kind of related to the movements that you're making to make sure that the Pride Festival has a wonderful lineup of local talent.
Mhm.
How do you sort of get involved, maybe if you have, maybe not so flamboyantly in your identity of being an LGBTQ identity, but still wanting to perform at the Pride Festival? Is that something you just need to talk to the Pride Center about, or what would you recommend doing to get along with that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm going to include as many people as possible. I'm not going to shut out someone simply because they're white. That's the very definition of racism, right? So, I just want to give, the Pride Festival, in my opinion, has needed a bit of an upgrade for some time now, and that's just one way that I can, give the respect and the needed spotlight to those marginalized communities who really, really deserve it. So, no, I'm not going to. Your application will not be denied based on your whiteness or your level of queerness whatsoever. I'm just making conscious efforts to make sure that those folks do have, like I said, a long overdue moment in the sun. Yep.
I have one more question online.
Okay.
And what's your favorite Diana Ross song?
That's almost a homophobic question. I have chills. I can't decide on one. I don't know. Yes, Donna Summer. How are we doing on time?
It's almost 1.
Okay.
It's up to you. Are you feeling, these are
Yeah,
a
we can
lot
go-
of
we can go
questions.
till
Do
1.
you want
We
to
can
keep
go till
going?
1.
Or we can have beverage and cookies and chit chat amongst the crowd.
I'm happy to take questions until 1, and then I can go powder off, we'll get a snack, and then I'll come back for some photos. How's that sound?
Okay. 2 more right in the front here.
Yeah.
I just first wanted to say thank you for coming here and sharing like your knowledge and hope to help us navigate this like scary and hard time, because it can sometimes be hard to find resources or even just people to say there is hope and I'm here for you. So I just really appreciate you coming here and speaking with us.
Thank you.
To ask a little silly, goofy question, how did you learn to walk in heels? Because I can't do it.
I'm going to change your life. Okay. So the best way to master the art of heel stomping is to wear them while you do your housework, like your chores, your laundry, your dishes, your vacuuming. That is it's all such a routine movement for your body. So when you put your body through that while wearing heels and having to balance and teeter a little bit, you'll become a pro in no time. You'll be a beautiful, elegant gazelle hopping down the streets of Salt Lake City in no time.
Love it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I just have a dumb question. Before you leave and like take it, words. Can I get pictures of your dress?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I would love to get a picture with anybody who wants it. So as soon as we finish our little Q&A portion, like I said, I'm going to go and reapply delicately, of course, because I only have time for mascara today. But I'll come back and I'd love to get pictures with you, and we can make a day of it. Absolutely, yeah.
Gia Bianca, thank you so much. Please join me in thanking Gia for this wonderful performance.
Thank you, folks. Thank you. Well, enjoy the snacks. Like I said, I'm just gonna powder my nose, and I'll be back in a moment. We'll get some photos. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening to some queer stories, and thank you for your open mind and your loving hearts. Appreciate you. My jewelry.
Because I know they lived in different states, but when I look at you, it's like you're that person. You sound like them too, which is even more trippy. Yeah, you have a twin somewhere. It's weird. I think they go to college in Idaho now. Yeah.